This is CBC Vancouver News.
Policing decision in Surrey.
Surrey Council has decided, with a vote held yesterday, to retain the RCMP.
The fallout.
The City of Surrey wants this resolved. I want this resolved.
And why it's still not finished. A devastating bus crash near Prince George.
My understanding is that this was a busload of workers on a Forest Service road.
More than a dozen people rushed to hospital. And from high in the trees to tranquilized in a tarp. How a wandering bear drew surprise and alarm in East Van. Good evening, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Thanks for joining us. After years of debate, infighting, election drama, and big spending, Surrey's mayor says the city will keep the RCMP. After a closed-door meeting last night, council has voted to stop the transition to a municipal force. But as Joel Ballard reports, the expensive saga is still not complete.
Good morning.
The mayor of Surrey says the RCMP is staying put.
Their commitment and work to ensure public safety has never, ever been an issue, not 4 years ago and not now.
The transition to the Surrey Police Force was kicked off by former Mayor Doug McCallum in 2018. But Mayor Brenda Locke has been adamant about keeping the Mounties, even though the provincial government recommends transitioning to a city force and even offered financial help.
Yesterday, I spoke with both the Premier and the Solicitor General, and I am satisfied that they are prepared to work in the spirit of cooperation with City.
The decision has plenty of critics.
I'm extremely concerned how this whole process went down.
Annis says the vote lacks transparency because it was held behind closed doors. Locke says that was due to non-disclosure agreements the province had council sign, and because of that, the city can't publicly share the costs. The BC government previously said the city would have to pay $72 million in severance to the Surrey Police Service. The head of the Surrey RCMP says the force is up to the task, and always has been. He says once the decision is finalized, they will focus on hiring.
The RCMP goal would be to attract many of the Surrey Police Service members into Surrey RCMP. In most cases, they can stay in their current roles. They can stay on their current shift.
And while council may have voted, it's still not a done deal. Surrey must now submit a report to the province about the return to the RCMP.
I understand the frustration of the people in Surrey. I understand the frustration of the men and women in the Surrey Police Service and the RCMP who are doing an amazing job. I also, the City of Surrey wants this resolved. I want this resolved. And before any final approval, Farnworth says he needs to ensure the plan meets several binding conditions. Over at the Surrey Police Service, the chief is still holding out hope.
I have to be that way because, of course, I've got 400 employees that have this hanging over their head. And I think the message has to be, it's not over yet.
So at this point, it's still unclear whether it's the last page or just the latest chapter on policing in Surrey. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Surrey.
We now go to Prince George, where a bus crashed earlier today on a remote road triggered a rare code orange at a nearby hospital. The situation unfolded at 8:30 in the morning. A charter bus carrying around 30 people crashed on a Forest Service road near Mackenzie. That's just north of Prince George. 18 people were taken to hospital. Everyone on board is now in stable condition. Coastal GasLink confirmed today the passengers were pipeline workers. The cause of the crash is unknown at this time, but there was some difficulty for emergency services accessing the crash site because of its remote location. A code orange was in place at University Hospital of Northern BC in Prince George. That's a code warning patients not to visit the emergency room.
Our healthcare system is under significant strain, and incidents like this are certainly an add to that strain for the frontline healthcare workers that we know are already seeing record volumes in our hospitals across the province. So first of all, let me thank those doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals that are providing that support to these injured workers in this bus crash.
A code orange is typically used for natural disasters and mass casualty events and is used to allow staff to focus on triaging treatment. Nurses and staff at the hospital have long been raising concerns about the lack of staffing. New information is out today on the search for unmarked graves at the former residential school in Kamloops. The findings say skeptics trespassed on the land back in 2021 with a disturbing motive. And a warning, some may find these next details unsettling.
The burden of countering denialism should not rest on survivors or on Indigenous communities searching for missing children or of those attempting to heal from the trauma inflicted. Denialism is a non-Indigenous problem, and therefore it's for non-Indigenous people to address it.
Her report cites examples of people carrying shovels to the site, wanting to examine the land themselves. There were other uninvited visitors, including some media, capturing images of the burial area without permission. She's now calling for urgent action to address denialism. The federal justice minister says he's open to all possibilities. We have an update now on the death of 2 women in Kelowna last week. Police say they were killed and a third person has now died. Other officers say they found the 2 victims in a home on Swan Drive around 9 p.m. last Thursday. A third person was found in the home and taken to hospital. They have now died. At the time, police said it was a man who was found inside. A child was also discovered in the home, physically unhurt. Mounties say investigators believe the deaths are isolated. Well, 5 sinkholes have emerged near a Trans Mountain pipeline expansion worksite in Langley, the bulk of them on a nearby farm. The sinkholes were caused by underground drilling for the project. Our John Hernandez spoke with the farmer who says he fears for the safety of his family and workers.
Rob Rint was driving by his Langley Township farm when he noticed a gaping hole eating away at his property.
It was 10 feet in diameter and then about 30 feet deep.
It was the 5th sinkhole he'd seen emerge on or near his farm since April, and by far the biggest.
First thought was one of my kids falling down the hole, right? Because they roamed the field quite regularly, driving around on golf carts.
The sinkholes caused by ongoing Trans Mountain pipeline expansion work. Crews have been drilling horizontally underground through much of the township, including here at 240th Street. The method is used to avoid digging up roads, properties, and sensitive ecosystems. But in a statement, a Trans Mountain spokesperson said, quote, "We have encountered challenging ground conditions in the area that have resulted in the formation of a small number of localized sinkholes, which is not unexpected." But Rint, who is also a township councillor, says there's been reports of sinkholes in other parts of the community as well, including this golf course where pipeline work is also being done.
When the first one popped up, they said that this was a localized incident, and it was the first one. Right, and then I found out that they're popping up all over the township.
Neither Trans Mountain nor the township would confirm how many incidents have taken place. A hole has taken out part of this street and since been filled with gravel and covered.
I'm concerned for fellow landowners around the township and also the pedestrians and cyclists, motorcycle, like anybody using this road.
The pipeline company says all holes have been temporarily stabilized with permanent fixes to be made in the weeks ahead.
I just want it fixed properly, and I want to be reinsured that another sinkhole is not going to happen in our field where it could possibly injure or kill somebody.
Construction work in the area is expected to continue through the summer as the government-owned pipeline project inches towards its expected 2024 completion. John Hernandez, CBC News, Langley Township.
Sales of the diabetes drug Ozempic have dropped sharply since BC announced new regulations to protect its supply in this province. In March, the government announced it was planning to restrict how much of the drug could be sold to people outside Canada. Demand for Ozempic surged as a trendy weight loss drug. In data released today, the province says between April 19th and the end of May, there's been a 99.6% drop in sales. The government also says a practitioner with a Nova Scotia license tied to a high percentage of Ozempic prescriptions in BC has been suspended, and an investigation into the 2 online pharmacies in this province is ongoing. Part of Vancouver Island's vital Highway 4 remains closed because of a wildfire. Several communities are all but cut off, disrupting the movement of goods and people, including tourists vital to the area. Susanna De Silva has the latest from Tofino tonight.
Twice a day, a government-organized convoy sets off from Port Alberni and disappears down the gravel road.
I just find that when you got 90 hairpins, and that if you're going fast, you just right off the road. And if you don't know how to properly drive and correct, you're in the ditch.
Several drivers already have. What should be just over an hour from Nanaimo to Port Alberni is now taking 4 extra hours along the logging road, adding danger and costs.
I used to do 2 trips in 8 hours. Now I'm doing 1 trip in almost 12 hours. It's quite a difference.
But the tough road is supposed to be for essential travel.
We kind of tried to keep going, business as usual. We realized that we weren't going to be able to keep brewing.
This grain only arrived here thanks to the kindness and small plane of another Vancouver Island brewery. Still, business driven by tourism is slow.
We were down like 30% just based on number of guests.
Further down the road in Tofino, the situation is even more dire. These streets should be packed with visitors.
New opportunity, want to launch a new business. It's not going to be without challenges.
The Howsett First Nation only launched this eco-tour company last month.
We've got some great promotions to encourage people that are local, throughout the West Coast, taking advantage of that.
Yeah, normally these are all filled with names.
This surf shop says they're doing about 10% of their normal business and laid off much of their staff.
Most of us are operating off about 16 weeks of profitability, so to lose 2 weeks right off the bat of our busy season can be devastating. For some people, it's close to a make it or break it scenario.
The province is saying it will be another week for a partial reopening of the highway, 1 month for it to be fully reopened, leaving some businesses crossing their fingers they can make it. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Tofino.
More than 100 students, teachers, and community members gathered today to celebrate Juneteenth, a U.S. federal holiday commemorating the end of slavery after the American Civil War. At Byron Creek Secondary in Burnaby this evening, there was dinner, live music, and poetry. Students from across different schools said it was important to come together to mark the day.
We all experience the same thing, so it feels nice to celebrate this very special day, the emancipation of slavery here in Canada. So it feels great to come together and eat and celebrate a beautiful day.
Obviously, it's a really big day. All of our privileges and like the things that we get to do all day started this day many years ago. So it's really exciting to be able to celebrate it with a bunch of people who have had the same experiences and struggles as us.
The school said it was one of the first school community celebrations of Emancipation Day. A team of Canadian scientists has just returned from a 2-week expedition off Vancouver Island, where they say they made unprecedented discoveries all surrounding deep-sea exploration, and among them, the deep connection between an octopus and her babies.
The exploration went off Vancouver Island and Haida Gwaii, far offshore, about 100 kilometers at a minimum, and then deep kilometers into the ocean. So it wasn't just me, it was an entire team which included the co-managing First Nations of the Marine Protected Areas, the Government of Canada, and then we actually brought in and leaned heavily into the international science community too. So the main focus of this expedition was to learn as much as we can about our deep sea, essentially discovery, with the aim to best understand and protect these special areas. I'm not going to throw shade to the other coasts of Canada, but none of these exist in the Arctic. None of them exist in the Atlantic of Canada. This is a BC phenomenon. Hidden mountain ranges of underwater volcanoes, hot springs like hydrothermal vents. We have cold seeps. So we have this mosaic of habitats that are hidden below the waves that don't usually occur in such high densities, don't usually occur together, but that we fortunately have off our coast, really close to land. On this expedition, we definitely discovered species new to science. We got to spend a couple hours on the seafloor with this small, beautiful purple octopus who was sitting on her eggs for at least 4.5 years. It's actually the world record for longest gestation of any animal. You could see the little eyes of the octopus peering out through the eggs. And this mom, while completely emaciated because the last meal she had was 5 years before, she was actually with her arms fending off the larger than her king crabs that were coming in, knowing that she was nearing the end of her life. But she was successfully fighting them off because she would not let go of that rock until she felt her young hatch from underneath her. And then when they were safe, she would let go, and then the crabs would get their meal and the young would be safe. And we got to see that play out for the first time ever documented on film. And let me tell you, there was not a dry eye on that boat. That experience went beyond science because it's something we can all relate to. Keeping your young safe, keeping the predators at bay and sacrifice. And it's the personal connections that we can make between people and animals that will move people to make conscious decisions about what happens to the deep. You know, I recognize the science, I recognize the usefulness of it, but on a personal level, it touched me in that way too. And that's how I knew that we were seeing something that was really going to move people.
Well, it was quite the sight for people in parts of Vancouver today. A black bear was hanging out in several trees near Victoria Drive in East Pender, getting lots of attention from crows and passerby. Some students at nearby Templeton Secondary said they were kept inside for a time as a precaution. Conservation officers eventually tranquilized the animal and carried it off to be returned to the woods. They say they also removed a bear near BCIT in Burnaby, and they're believed to be siblings. Neither of the bears displayed signs of aggressive behavior, so both will be held overnight and moved to a wilderness location outside the city. Several black bears have been seen in the area over the past few months. You're reminded not to feed them or leave things that they might want to snack on. And if you do run into a black bear, conservation officers say do not run, speak softly, and back away slowly.
Vancouver's more expensive than LA. We realized that today.
For fans of reality TV, the stars of Selling Sunset were in town, and they had lots to say about Vancouver real estate. That's
Significantly
next.
more expensive.
At least the condo market.
Thanks for staying with us on our commercial-free live stream. Well, gardening is a well-loved pastime in this province, but many British Columbians are not able to plant their own gardens because of a lack of space or time. But Michelle Elliott got some advice for you from some green thumbs today on CBC's noon show, BC Today.
Emma Tanaka is with me as well, garden director at Van Dusen Botanical Gardens. Emma, you work as well with Garden BC. How can people without gardens but are really interested, how can they get started?
Well, you know, gardening is just something that all different people from different ages can really start to get into and really enjoy. And one thing that's really great is with gardensbc.com, we just launched a website. It provides so many different resources for people to go onto the site and learn about all the different gardens that they can visit across the province. And we also have a blog on that website that has Brian Minter, who's one of the writers.
Of course it does.
Of course. And provides the public with a lot of different articles and different types of writings about gardening tips, how to create your own garden, how to start. One thing that's really great about gardens at the moment is that so many of them are doing lots of different programming and lots of different classes for the public.
Okay.
And that focus on not just plants and gardening, but also just about conservation, sustainability, biodiversity. So there's quite a lot of different topics that they cover. So
How much does that play a role then, the conservation piece of it?
It's really top of mind for everybody in the industry, and I know that a lot of gardens are changing their practices to reflect the impacts of climate change. So a lot of the instructors that are instructing, a lot of the educational components of the programs at gardens, they certainly keep that top of mind and try and incorporate that into all the different types of teachings and classes that they provide.
If I'm someone in Vancouver who has an apartment and perhaps just a little patio, where do I start?
Well, gardensbc.com,
What would we
has that
see
resource.
there? What kind of advice?
You would be able to go on to the different garden links and to be able to find out what kind of programs and classes that they offer.
Okay.
And a lot of them do offer, how do you garden in small dwellings and in
Right.
urban dwellings? Because it is something that is really challenging and difficult at the moment. And I think that once you start reading and looking into different types of programming that's available, you can really kind of open your mind and see what's possible within your space, because it really depends on how big your space is.
Olivia, what do you like to garden?
I actually like to garden things that we can eat. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'm a big foodie, so I like to garden, for example, I start off with easier things like lettuce, kale, even tomatoes, and now I'm trying to explore even more cultural, diverse species and more native species. Like as you can see in our garden, we have pollinator-friendly plants in store for the garden.
You may have seen them showcase luxurious properties worth millions of dollars on the hit Netflix show Selling Sunset, but Jason Oppenheim and Mary Bonnet were in Vancouver yesterday to share some of their thoughts about our real estate market with CBC's On the Coast.
So we went to dinner last night, and then a couple of the gentlemen asked us to go see some property today. One of them is trying to sell a couple of penthouses, so we went this morning at 9 a.m. and saw two $25 million penthouses and gave our comments. And, everyone thinks that their city's more expensive or too expensive. Honestly, Vancouver's more expensive than LA. We realized that today. It is significantly more expensive.
At least the condo market.
Now, Jason, you've got several offices, mostly in California, but you also have one in Mexico. Could you see an expansion to Vancouver?
I've been asked that question. I could see it. Yeah, the difficulty is I like to be very hands-on, and it's about 5.5 hours door to door for me, so potentially.
Okay, but you're not sold on it quite yet.
I just opened in San Diego and Newport Beach, so I want to take it slow. I want to develop those offices before I start going, spread myself too thin.
Fair enough.
Here's a time lapse of how Vancouver started the day. Overcast and a bit cool. Johanna will have your full forecast next.
The C-Bus was one of the better ideas of the Barrett government in the 1970s. The bright orange C-buses have been scooting folks from North Vancouver to downtown ever since 1977. But is nothing sacred? Today, Grace McCarthy confirmed it's going to be goodbye orange, hello red, white, and blue.
Oh, yes, As a matter of fact, all of the transit under British Columbia Transit in a phasing-in operation will all be done in the colors, in a consistent color. As it is now, I think we have something like 6 or 7 different color combinations throughout the province.
In fact, if you put together the last dozen years of C and transit buses, you get something that looks like a painter's apron. BC Hydro used to like green and blue trim when they ran the buses. The NDP went in for orange and brown, by purest coincidence, the party's own colors. And in the last year or so, everything's been geared to catch the BC spirit, red, white, and blue, again by equal coincidence, the colors of the Social Credit Party.
I think that would be a little bit of a picky criticism. We have started a long time ago on a consistent color combination throughout, and we're just being consistent.
It's a color scheme that will take a little getting used to.
The C-Bus, they're going to change the colors, the paint job.
Oh, are they? Oh.
That's the government colors.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And do you want my opinion of it?
Yeah.
It's going to be red, white, and blue?
That's right.
Well, that's fine. That's dandy.
No, red and white's Canadian, red, white, and blue's American.
No, leave them as they are. Why? Because it's, yeah, I like the way they are, you know? Red, white, and blue? No.
McCarthy isn't saying how soon the C-buses will be repainted or how much it's all going to cost. But whatever the cost, in C-buses this year, red, white, and blue will definitely be in. Larry Rose, CBC News.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The 15th annual Latincouver Festival kicks off this July, and CBC Vancouver is proud to be the exclusive media partner. Enjoy a series of sensational Latin American experiences and the popular Carnaval del Sol Festival. And CBC British Columbia launches the Herb Original, a new podcast for Indigenous History Month. All episodes are available now on CBC Listen.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
And CBC senior meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff joins us now for a look at the forecast. Joe, what are you keeping an eye on for the weekend?
Yes, the all-important weekend, Michelle, the high-pressure forecast, and we do have a cooler, more unsettled next couple of days in the cards for most of BC. This is good news for our fire danger risk and for our drought outlook, but yes, a lot of moisture lining up with the weekend. This is the system. So the center of the low still hanging back over the Alaska Panhandle. The cold front is what brought the thunderstorms and the showers today. In fact, over the past couple of days to the BC interior, that's now tracking through Alberta, and we're left with this zonal flow, meaning west to east. So that's going to continue to bring in showers that will be really hard to nail down as far as timing. This was almost, by the way, an atmospheric river event, really tapping into some subtropical moisture. Not temperatures, though. We're about at seasonal across the province. Wanted to show you the fire danger rating because after just a couple days of showers and cooler temperatures, it really lowers the risk. The problem with our dry soils and fuels is that it won't take long for things to turn around, and we're going to keep an eye on that late next week. Just want to show you the future of this rotating low. It slides down the coast as we head into Saturday and Sunday. A few pinwheels expected across the south coast. Really hard to say exactly when we'll get those showers. Plan for scattered showers on Saturday, maybe a few less on Sunday, and that'll linger through to Monday for the south coast. As far as rainfall accumulations, we're really seeing most of it through central and northern coastal sections, but nice to see that green right across the province. Watch for the risk of a thunderstorm through 100 Mile, Williams Lake, Shuswap, Kelowna, all looking at that isolated thunderstorm risk. So I've got to keep it in for Metro Vancouver. Chance of seeing some good sunny breaks between those rounds of showers. Breezier for Sunday, and notice temperatures coming down to just a 16. Seasonals are 19. Steadier rain for Monday, Tuesday. And then, Michelle, the next big warm-up, always just around the corner.
Okay, and we know that fire risk coming down is a relief to people in the fire zone.
Definitely, we need it.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
And that is your late news for Friday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit cbc.ca/BC. Your next local newscast is on Radio 1 tomorrow morning at 6:30. Good night.